Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of Ask Deadly. This week's episode is going to be a direct response to the DayZ beta PvP Ask Deadly episode from last week. So I'll be taking a look at some of the top comments from there and doing my best to answer them. So let's get started. How do you think you will be entering your base when base building comes in without anybody being able to? I mean, the H1Z1, for example, used to use a code at the gate to enter, but that would be silly in DayZ. That's actually a really great question, and I think no survival MMO, to my knowledge, has actually done it the right way, but that doesn't mean that I know the answer either. It just, there always seems to be some sort of issue with the way base building works in most of the survival MMOs. On one hand, you could do some sort of like keypad lock system that basically allows players to lock up their structures, but unfortunately if some dude farms enough or gets lucky enough or unfortunately duplicates enough C4, they could bust down the door, or like if somebody sits there all night slapping the door with a sledgehammer, then they get into your base, which you've worked probably 10-15 plus hours on putting together, because in survival MMOs, building a base is usually a very difficult thing to do, and it's usually left to the end game. So you got to make sure that there's a balance between allowing players to raid bases, but also making it worthwhile to create one. Now, unfortunately, we really don't know too much about how that system is going to work. To my knowledge, there isn't any gameplay on YouTube that's featuring the base building feature with locked doors. Like how gates are going to work still remains to be seen. How to lock doors in buildings and barricade them to keep your supplies in, that's still up in the air. So they might make it where you might have to have a door key with a lock that you can find that spawns throughout the world, and then use that lock to the door that you want to barricade. But does that mean that some dude with a sledgehammer can just beat down the door? So again, I don't really know the answer. So I would love to hear what you guys have to say though in the comment section below. Here is an idea that I'm not too sure, that probably has a lot of holes and I haven't thought it through completely, but one I was thinking about recently which might be a good idea, and that is lock degradation. So basically, the longer that you don't upkeep your lock, the more it degrades over time, and therefore making other players able to break into your stash and loot your supplies. So let's say, for example, there's multiple different tiers of locks. You have like tier 1 locks, tier 2 locks, and tier 3 locks. Tier 1 locks, you can lock your door and it's good for up to 24 hours. If you come back, you can actually just reset the lock and the degrade rate will just reset on itself. Like level 2 could be 48 hours, level 3 could be 72 hours. Obviously the rarity of the locks increases depending, like there would be barely any level 3 locks. It would be a really big trade commodity item. So once you set that lock, it is basically indestructible until that time has run up. And when that time runs up, that's the moment when players can raid your base. So if you're taking like long breaks from the game, then somebody will be able to get into your stash. So it will almost always be worth checking locks to see how much they've degraded, to see if you can actually bust into a stash. But that's just one idea. I mean, I don't know if that's the perfect solution. Recently, I've been dying to people always saying that they're friendly. Do you think the DayZ community will ever go back to what it used to be? I haven't had an encounter recently where I didn't just die after the other player says I'm friendly. It's actually making me not want to trust anybody because it makes me KOS more. Love your content, Deadly. Keep up the awesome work. Alright, so here is the honest truth, and this is from somebody that has been playing DayZ religiously since 2012, since the very beginning. That sort of environment only existed for a month or two at the very beginning stages of the DayZ mod. It's actually, in my opinion, from my perspective, largely a myth that the game was ever more friendly than it is now. In fact, from my perspective, the game is the most friendly it's ever been because there's so many tools for different encounters in DayZ standalone. I think people forget how combat oriented the mod was. It was more so in that army simulator, Arma 2. There wasn't a whole lot of opportunities to be friendly. I'm sure it happened from time to time, especially if you played on specific servers, and also if you've seen a lot of YouTubers, for example Frankie, who really drove the hero sort of survivor play style, but we gotta, like, not all of that is how DayZ actually plays. A lot of it was just for entertainment purposes. Still great videos, just not exactly how DayZ is actually played or has ever played that friendly. So just keep in mind that the #1 rule to DayZ standalone, and this dates back to its origins, is you cannot trust anybody. So if you keep getting killed by somebody who's saying that they're friendly and they're not, that means that you need to adjust your play style to anticipate that mistake or anticipate that lie, and that can be very difficult. So it is really unfortunate that you may have to shoot a lot of people more so than you'd like, but that is just filling that survival role. It doesn't mean that you're a bandit. Getting into combat just means that you're trying to survive, and sometimes making a decision on shooting somebody or letting them go is a life and death decision. And that's one that I think many other video games haven't grasped as well as DayZ standalone has. That life or death choice to take somebody out who could be your friend or is possibly your enemy. Do you think when they introduce base building, they'll remove the public hive? Being able to base build and then somebody just being able to server hop would kind of suck. Yeah, I've actually thought about this. I'm not too sure how the devs are going to manage that, because that's one of the main reasons why I don't play on public servers anymore, is because of server hopping and mainly ghosting. Ghosting is when one player knows your location, logs out of their server, switches to a different public hive to get a better position, and switches back to the original position. And because the downtime in between server switches isn't as much as it used to be, it's actually quite viable. In fact, the only reason why there's a login timer is to prevent ghosting, but it's just simply not long enough. In fact, in my honest opinion, private hive servers shouldn't really even have a login spawn time. It just doesn't make any sense, because that's the only reason why it's there. The only way that they could possibly do it is it would detect that if you're inside of a base, it would have to port you out of the base and log you somewhere in the area. But I really don't think they're going to do that. I think, unfortunately, building bases on public servers is just going to be like that. There's going to be some issues with server hopping, and that's just the way it's going to be. Hi Deadly, do you think the devs will fix FPS drop in the forests? In 0.61 I was getting really good FPS in forests, but now I get more FPS in towns than I do in forests. Well, I was actually quite unaware that that was even a problem. I guess it's because when you run like a mid-tier gaming computer, DayZ runs and operates quite well. So I feel like if you're struggling right now with the forests, it's probably because your computer is starting to get a little bit too old. Because most computers should be able to run DayZ. Most gaming computers that have been released in the last 6 or 7 years should be able to actually run DayZ quite fine now, since the June 2016 patch 0.60, the new rendering engine. But I know that if you're in areas like Mishkino military base, you'll start to lag due to the game's problem. It's actually an issue with the 32-bit client, so if you switch over to 64, the lag is gone completely. So I would recommend give 64-bit a try and see if that fixes your problem, and if not, unfortunately, the honest truth here is your machine is just a little bit too outdated for modern video games, because for the most part, from what I hear from not only from what I've seen firsthand, but from hearing from other people, there's a lot of people that are able to run DayZ standalone now off their laptops, off of laptops that are only a couple of years old. So if you are struggling, it's the sign that you kind of need to start thinking about upgrading. I think that it would be infinitely better if they tweaked the ruining of items and clothing in the beta. It is highly unrealistic that a single bullet can completely destroy clothing and all the items spread within the clothing. Half the reason people don't run around with loaded magazines at the moment is because they will all get ruined from one shot with any decent caliber weapon. That's a really good point. First off, I think they should bring back searching a stack of ruined ammo for damaged rounds. I don't know why they removed that. I thought it was a really good idea to allow players to actually search through a full stack, because you are right. Even if you shoot like a stack of 27.60 by 39 in real life, probably only 1 or 2 of those bullets would actually be destroyed. Now, if you shoot a full box, like more would be destroyed, if that makes any sense. So they would have to find a balance to that. But yeah, it definitely feels unrealistic, and I do prefer the old system. You know, DayZ had it right, in my opinion. If you had a 20 stack of Mosin ammo and you could search the ammo, sort the ammo, you would end up with like 6 damaged rounds. And obviously those damaged rounds are not going to perform as well as pristine rounds, but at least it's going to give you a chance to fire your weapon back at the cost of destroying your weapon at a faster rate because the rounds are damaged. I think that's a good balance. So really hope the devs bring that back because I thought it was solid. Now, what you're saying, they're actually, I believe, going to be introducing. We've seen like small iterations of that, like over time, like especially in the past where they've been experimenting with where the bullet hits your backpack will dictate what item in your backpack gets destroyed. And there is some instances of that already happening. I just think the damage levels are so extreme when a bullet hits your clothing that it basically just overloads that system and destroys everything. Now, eventually, this is a pure aesthetic thing, so I don't think we're going to be seeing this until like way later in development, but it would be nice to have like little impacts of where you actually got shot on your clothing, rather than just having the entire jacket reach a ruined status. But you know what? They don't really need to reinvent the wheel there. I think the system is a good idea. They just need to balance the damage a little bit more. Like, I don't think a zombie should be able to take a rider's jacket from pristine to ruined in a single hit. Like, that is obviously a bug, so they need to do some work there. Do you think DayZ 0.63 will revive the game, or is it too late? This has to be the most common question that gets asked during my live streams since the beta unveil at Gamescom. Well, I don't have the answer for you. I don't think anybody does. The game is definitely in a low point. We're waiting for beta to get released. There's some other games that are coming out that is obviously distracting and taking players out of DayZ standalone for a while. But I would just say ask everybody. You know, like, does Lyric say that he's going to come back to play beta? I'm pretty sure he will. You know, a lot of the other big streamers too, I don't need a name drop, you guys know them. A lot of people have their origin story in DayZ Mod and DayZ Standalone, and now they've moved on to different categories and different games. But most of them are keeping their eye on the project, and most, if not all, have already stated that they're going to be coming back and checking out the beta. And that's what a lot of people have been waiting for, is this beta patch. Some people have been waiting for beta for years. They just put alpha down, they're like, listen, I'm not going to touch this game at all until it reaches open beta. So I don't care about it until then. No matter how long it's going to take, I believe in the developers. I'm just not going to play the game until then. I think there's a lot of people that are in that position. Like, millions of people own DayZ. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens when beta hits experimental. It's really going to be upsetting if experimental is really broken, because even though it's experimental, people are going to be treating that as the launch of beta no matter what. So even though it's not going to be reaching stable branch for many months after experimental's released, it will be judged upon how smooth experimental plays. And I think the developers understand that. I'm not too sure how much they care about the reaction of the audience that might be criticizing the experimental phase of the beta, but it will significantly affect the marketing of the game, so it needs to be done delicately. So I think that if a lot of the old streamers come back and start playing DayZ and they start saying good things about the game, like they actually enjoy it, not just, you know, people saying it's fun for the sake of saying it's fun, but actually enjoying it and wanting to come back and playing it day after day after day, then that's going to be really good for the game. I mean, look what it did to PUBG. Like, honestly, this is my honest opinion. The only reason why PUBG is as popular as it is now is because of the live streamers. Those guys made that game popular. Like, all of the biggest streamers on the platform are playing PUBG right now. So obviously that's going to be a massive marketing arm for that game. So if I think all of those guys that originally had their start in DayZ, you know, just jump on DayZ beta only for a couple days, like to a couple weeks. then that's going to breathe a hell of a lot more life back into the game, and hopefully carry the project until modding, which is going to be happening even a few patches after that initial release. So we'll probably have modding within the year. So that's going to be also huge to the game. People want new maps to explore, new things to do, and the modders want to jump on and create their own unique experiences. So it's a low point for the game right now, but this game could still be huge. Like, there is still time. It's just, it is running out. Well, guys, that is going to be it from me today. If you guys want an opportunity for me to read your question on next week's video, then please do leave one in the comment section below. And as always, if you see somebody who has a very similar question to you, please upvote them, because I will be reading some of the top comments first. So anyways, guys, have a good rest of your weekend, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow on the live stream.